Question 1. The efficiency study reveals potential areas for streamlining administrative processes at the Adventist University of Chile, which could lead to significant cost savings. However, some proposed changes might impact student support services and the availability of certain academic resources. Which approach best addresses this situation, considering the university's mission and regulatory environment? Option A. Prioritize the reduction of academic programs that are perceived as less financially viable to reallocate resources towards administrative efficiency without extensive consultation. Option B. Immediately implement the proposed administrative changes that offer the highest cost savings to improve the university's financial standing, assuming that any negative impacts on students will be manageable. Option C. Focus exclusively on technological solutions for administrative tasks, disregarding the human element and potential impact on staff morale and student interaction. Option D. Conduct a thorough risk assessment that evaluates the potential impact of proposed changes on student welfare, academic quality, and compliance with Chilean higher education regulations, while also identifying opportunities for genuine operational improvements. Correct answer is D. Conduct a thorough risk assessment that evaluates the potential impact of proposed changes on student welfare, academic quality, and compliance with Chilean higher education regulations, while also identifying opportunities for genuine operational improvements. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the university's operational efficiency goals with the ethical imperative to ensure fair and equitable access to education, as well as compliance with relevant Chilean higher education regulations. The decision-maker must consider the potential impact of proposed efficiency measures on student welfare and the university's mission. Careful judgment is required to avoid unintended negative consequences that could undermine the university's reputation and its commitment to its students. Correct approach involves a comprehensive risk assessment that prioritizes student well-being and academic integrity, while identifying potential operational improvements. This approach is right because it aligns with the principles of responsible institutional management and the ethical obligations of educational institutions in Chile. Specifically, it necessitates a thorough review of existing regulations governing university operations and student admissions, ensuring that any proposed changes do not violate these frameworks. It also reflects a commitment to transparency and stakeholder consultation, which are often implicit or explicit requirements in institutional governance. An approach that focuses solely on cost reduction without considering the impact on student support services would be ethically flawed. It fails to acknowledge the university's responsibility to provide a supportive learning environment and could lead to a decline in student success, potentially violating implicit or explicit commitments to student welfare. An approach that prioritizes immediate financial gains by cutting essential academic programs without a strategic long-term plan would also be problematic. This could undermine the university's core educational mission and its accreditation standards, leading to regulatory scrutiny and a loss of public trust. An approach that proposes to implement changes without consulting relevant stakeholders, such as students, faculty, and administrative staff, would be procedurally unsound and ethically questionable. This lack of consultation can lead to resistance, misunderstanding, and the implementation of ineffective or harmful policies, potentially contravening principles of good governance and institutional transparency. Professionals in this situation should employ a decision-making framework that includes 1. Clearly defining the objectives of the efficiency study. 2. Identifying all potential risks and benefits associated with proposed changes. 3. Consulting relevant Chilean higher education laws and institutional policies. 4. Engaging with all affected stakeholders to gather feedback and ensure buy-in. And 5. Developing mitigation strategies for identified risks before implementing any changes. This systematic process ensures that decisions are informed, ethical, and compliant with regulatory requirements. Question 2. During the evaluation of the upcoming entrance examination for the Adventist University of Chile, what is the most appropriate risk assessment approach to ensure the integrity and fairness of the admissions process? Option A. Prioritize the speed of administering the exam to ensure all candidates can complete it within the allotted time. Option B. Rely solely on historical data from previous entrance examinations to predict potential issues. Option C. Focus primarily on the total number of applicants to gauge the overall scale of the examination. Option D. Systematically identify potential threats to exam security and academic dishonesty and develop proactive mitigation strategies. The correct answer is D. Systematically identify potential threats to exam security and academic dishonesty and develop proactive mitigation strategies. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the university's commitment to academic integrity with the need to provide a fair and supportive assessment process for prospective students. The core tension lies in identifying and mitigating potential risks to the validity of the entrance exam without unduly disadvantaging genuine candidates. Careful judgment is required to ensure that the risk assessment process is thorough, objective, and aligned with the Adventist University of Chile's established guidelines for admissions and examinations. The correct approach involves a systematic and proactive identification of potential risks to the integrity of the entrance exam. This includes considering factors such as the security of examination materials, the potential for academic dishonesty, and the adequacy of the testing environment. By developing and implementing mitigation strategies for these identified risks, the university can enhance the fairness and reliability of the assessment process. This aligns with the ethical obligation to ensure a transparent and equitable admissions process, as well as any specific regulations or internal policies of the Adventist University of Chile that govern entrance examinations. An approach that focuses solely on the number of applicants without considering the nature of potential risks is procedurally flawed. This overlooks the qualitative aspects of risk assessment, such as the likelihood and impact of specific threats to exam integrity. It fails to address the fundamental purpose of risk assessment, which is to safeguard the validity of the examination. An approach that prioritizes speed of administration over thoroughness is also problematic. While efficiency is desirable, it should not come at the expense of a robust risk assessment. Rushing through the process increases the likelihood of overlooking critical vulnerabilities, thereby compromising the integrity of the entrance exam and potentially leading to unfair outcomes for applicants. An approach that relies exclusively on past exam results without considering current or emerging risks is insufficient. While historical data can be informative, it does not account for new or evolving threats to exam security or academic integrity. A comprehensive risk assessment must be dynamic and responsive to contemporary challenges. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured risk management framework. This typically includes 1. Risk identification, brainstorming and documenting all potential threats to the integrity of the process. 2. Risk analysis, assessing the likelihood and potential impact of each identified risk. 3. Risk evaluation, prioritizing risks based on their severity. 4. Risk treatment, developing and implementing strategies to mitigate, transfer, avoid, or accept risks. 5. Risk monitoring and review, continuously evaluating the effectiveness of implemented strategies and updating the risk assessment as needed. This systematic approach ensures that all relevant factors are considered and that decisions are based on a comprehensive understanding of potential challenges. Question 3. System analysis indicates a member of the Adventist University of Chile Admissions Committee has a close personal relationship with a prospective student applying for the upcoming academic year. The committee member is aware of this relationship and its potential to influence their professional judgment. Considering the principles of academic integrity and fair evaluation, what is the most appropriate course of action for the committee member? Option A. Offer the applicant informal advice on how to strengthen their application after the submission deadline has passed. Option B. Privately discuss the applicant's qualifications with other committee members to highlight their strengths without formally voting. Option C. Disclose the personal relationship to the admissions committee and recuse themselves from any deliberation or voting concerning that applicant. Option D. Evaluate the applicant as usual, confident in their ability to remain objective despite the personal connection. Correct answer is C. Disclose the personal relationship to the admissions committee and recuse themselves from any deliberation or voting concerning that applicant. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires an individual to navigate potential conflicts of interest and ensure the integrity of an academic admissions process. The admissions committee member has a personal relationship with an applicant, which could unconsciously influence their judgment, even with the best intentions. Maintaining fairness and impartiality is paramount in university admissions, as it directly impacts the credibility of the institution and the equal opportunity for all applicants. The correct approach involves proactively disclosing the personal relationship to the admissions committee and recusing oneself from any discussion or decision-making regarding that specific applicant. This demonstrates ethical conduct and adherence to principles of transparency and fairness. While specific regulations for the Adventist University of Chile entrance exam are not publicly detailed here, general ethical guidelines for academic institutions universally emphasize avoiding conflicts of interest and ensuring impartiality in admissions. This approach upholds the integrity of the process by allowing for an unbiased evaluation of all candidates. An incorrect approach would be to proceed with evaluating the applicant without disclosure. Believing personal objectivity can be maintained. This fails to acknowledge the inherent risk of unconscious bias and violates the principle of transparency. It could lead to perceptions of favoritism, undermining trust in the admissions process. Another incorrect approach would be to discuss the applicant's strengths and weaknesses with other committee members in a way that subtly advocates for their admission, even without a formal vote. This still constitutes an undue influence and bypasses the formal, objective evaluation process. Finally, attempting to influence the applicant directly by offering advice on how to improve their application after the submission period would also be inappropriate, as it provides an unfair advantage over other candidates. Professionals in such situations should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes ethical conduct and institutional integrity. This involves identifying potential conflicts of interest, understanding relevant institutional policies and ethical guidelines, and taking proactive steps to mitigate risks. When in doubt, seeking guidance from a supervisor or a designated ethics officer is a crucial step in ensuring responsible decision-making. Question 4. Performance analysis shows a significant number of first-year students at the Adventist University of Chile are struggling to meet academic performance benchmarks. Which of the following approaches best addresses this situation while adhering to the university's educational mission and ethical guidelines for student support? Option A. Initiate a comprehensive review of student support services, including academic advising and tutoring, to identify areas for enhancement and offer targeted interventions to struggling students. Option B. Conduct individual meetings with each underperforming student to understand their specific challenges and collaboratively develop a personalized academic improvement plan. Option C. Implement a mandatory remedial course for all first-year students, regardless of their current performance level, to reinforce foundational academic skills. Option D. Immediately place all underperforming students on academic probation, with a strict warning about potential expulsion if performance does not improve within one academic term. The correct answer is A. Initiate a comprehensive review of student support services, including academic advising and tutoring, to identify areas for enhancement and offer targeted interventions to struggling students. Explanation. This scenario presents a professionally challenging situation because it requires balancing the university's commitment to academic integrity with the need to support students facing academic difficulties. The challenge lies in identifying appropriate interventions that are both effective and compliant with university regulations and ethical considerations regarding student support and academic fairness. Careful judgment is required to avoid overly punitive measures that could discourage students or overly lenient measures that could undermine academic standards. The correct approach involves a structured, evidence-based risk assessment that prioritizes student support and academic development. This approach aligns with the Adventist University of Chile's likely commitment to holistic student development, which often includes providing resources and guidance for academic improvement. Specifically, it involves identifying the root causes of underperformance through open communication, and then offering tailored support mechanisms, such as academic advising, tutoring, or study skills workshops. This is ethically sound as it demonstrates a commitment to student success and provides opportunities for remediation, reflecting principles of fairness and due process. It also aligns with general educational best practices that emphasize support over immediate exclusion. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on immediate disciplinary action without exploring underlying causes fails to uphold the university's potential ethical obligation to support its students. This approach risks alienating students and may not address the actual issues hindering their academic performance, potentially leading to a cycle of failure. It also bypasses the opportunity for constructive intervention, which is a hallmark of responsible academic governance. Another incorrect approach that involves ignoring the performance data and continuing with the status quo neglects the university's responsibility to monitor academic standards and intervene when students are clearly struggling. This can lead to a decline in overall academic quality and a failure to identify systemic issues that might be affecting multiple students. It is professionally negligent as it abdicates the duty of oversight and proactive problem solving. A third incorrect approach that involves implementing a one-size-fits-all punitive measure without considering individual circumstances is also ethically flawed. It fails to acknowledge the diverse reasons for academic underperformance and can be perceived as unfair and inequitable. This approach lacks the nuanced understanding necessary for effective student support and academic management. A professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a systematic review of performance data, followed by open communication with the student to understand their challenges. Based on this understanding, a plan for support and improvement should be developed collaboratively, with clear expectations and follow-up mechanisms. This process ensures that interventions are targeted, fair, and aligned with the university's mission and ethical principles. Question 5. The monitoring system demonstrates a pattern of unusual access to sensitive academic records by a small group of users outside of their typical working hours. This pattern has been flagged as a potential risk. What is the most appropriate initial step to address this situation? Option A. Review the university's internal policies on data access and academic integrity, and then gather more detailed logs to understand the context of the access before proceeding. Option B. Assume the alerts are due to a system malfunction and schedule a routine system check for the following week. Option C. Immediately suspend the access of the flagged users and initiate a formal investigation into potential data misuse. Option D. Inform the university's legal counsel about the potential breach and await their instructions before taking any action. The correct answer is C. Immediately suspend the access of the flagged users and initiate a formal investigation into potential data misuse. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires an individual to interpret data from a monitoring system and make a judgment about potential risks to the university's academic integrity and reputation. The challenge lies in distinguishing between minor deviations and significant indicators of academic misconduct, which could have serious consequences if mishandled. Careful judgment is required to avoid both overreaction and underreaction. The correct approach involves a systematic and evidence-based evaluation of the detected anomalies. This entails cross-referencing the monitoring system's output with established academic policies and ethical guidelines of the Adventist University of Chile. It requires gathering further information to confirm the nature and extent of any potential issues before taking action. This approach aligns with the university's commitment to academic honesty and due process, ensuring that any interventions are fair, justified, and in accordance with its internal regulations and ethical standards. An incorrect approach that involves immediate disciplinary action based solely on the monitoring system's alerts fails to acknowledge the possibility of false positives or misinterpretations. This bypasses the necessary steps of investigation and verification, potentially leading to unfair accusations and damage to the reputation of students or faculty. It also violates principles of natural justice and due process, which are fundamental to any academic institution. Another incorrect approach, which is to ignore the monitoring system's findings, represents a dereliction of professional duty. This failure to act on potential indicators of academic misconduct undermines the university's commitment to maintaining high academic standards and can foster an environment where such misconduct may go unchecked. It also exposes the university to reputational damage if issues are later discovered through other means. A third incorrect approach, which is to dismiss the alerts as technical glitches without further investigation, is also professionally unsound. While technical issues can occur, a responsible professional would first attempt to understand the nature of the alerts and rule out genuine concerns before attributing them solely to system errors. This approach neglects the potential for serious breaches of academic integrity. The professional decision-making process in such situations should involve a structured approach. 1. Acknowledge and document the data from the monitoring system. 2. Consult relevant university policies and ethical guidelines regarding academic integrity and data interpretation. 3. Conduct a preliminary assessment to determine the severity and nature of the potential issues indicated by the system. 4. If warranted, initiate a formal investigation process, gathering further evidence and providing opportunities for explanation. 5. Take appropriate action based on confirmed findings, adhering to established procedures. 6. Document all steps taken and decisions made throughout the process. Question 6. The monitoring system demonstrates a statistically significant increase in unusual response pattern during the recent Adventist University of Chile entrance exam, potentially indicating a risk to the integrity of the assessment process. Which of the following actions represents the most appropriate initial response to this situation? Option A. Issue a general warning to all future exam candidates about the importance of academic integrity and the consequences of cheating. Option B. Focus on enhancing the security of the physical exam environment for future assessments, assuming the current anomalies are isolated incidents. Option C. Conduct a detailed analysis of the anomalous data to identify potential causes, such as technical glitches, test design issues, or specific candidate behaviors, before taking any action. Option D. Immediately invalidate all exams exhibiting the unusual patterns and initiate disciplinary proceedings against the affected candidates. The correct answer is D. Immediately invalidate all exams exhibiting the unusual patterns and initiate disciplinary proceedings against the affected candidates. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the need for efficient resource allocation with the ethical imperative to ensure student well-being and academic integrity. The university entrance exam is a critical juncture for prospective students, and any perceived unfairness or lack of support can have significant consequences. The monitoring system's demonstration of potential anomalies necessitates a careful and systematic risk assessment to identify the nature and severity of the risks and to determine appropriate mitigation strategies. The correct approach involves a thorough investigation and data analysis to understand the root cause of the observed anomalies. This aligns with the principles of fairness and due diligence expected of an educational institution. Specifically, it adheres to the implicit regulatory framework governing university admissions in Chile, which emphasizes transparency and equitable treatment of all applicants. By seeking to understand the why behind the anomalies, the university demonstrates a commitment to upholding the integrity of its entrance exam process and ensuring that all candidates are assessed fairly. This proactive and analytical stance is crucial for maintaining the credibility of the Adventist University of Chile. An approach that immediately assumes misconduct without further investigation is ethically flawed. It presumes guilt and can lead to unjust accusations, damaging the reputation of innocent students and the institution. This fails to uphold the principle of innocent until proven guilty, a fundamental tenet of fairness. Another incorrect approach, focusing solely on immediate punitive measures without understanding the context, is also problematic. This overlooks potential systemic issues or external factors that might be contributing to the anomalies. Such a reactive stance can lead to ineffective solutions and may not address the underlying problems, potentially creating new risks or exacerbating existing ones. A professional decision-making process in such a situation should involve 1. Identification of the anomaly, recognizing that the monitoring system has flagged potential issues. 2. Information gathering and analysis, collecting all relevant data related to the anomalies and conducting a detailed analysis to understand patterns, frequency, and potential causes. This includes reviewing exam protocols, technical logs, and any other pertinent information. 3. Risk assessment, evaluating the potential impact of the anomalies on the fairness of the exam and the integrity of the admissions process. 4. Developing mitigation strategies, based on the risk assessment, devising appropriate actions which could range from further technical review to targeted investigations or adjustments to future exam procedures. 5. Consultation and documentation, engaging relevant stakeholders, e.g., IT department, academic affairs, and meticulously documenting all steps taken and decisions made. Question 7. The monitoring system demonstrates a significant increase in the number of students exhibiting unusual login patterns and extended periods of inactivity during practice assessments for the Adventist University of Chile entrance exam. Which of the following represents the most appropriate initial response to this observation? Option A. Conduct a technical audit of the monitoring system to ensure its accuracy and functionality, without immediate regard for the specific student behaviors observed. Option B. Immediately flag all students exhibiting these patterns for potential academic misconduct and initiate disciplinary proceedings. Option C. Initiate a review of the monitoring system's data to identify specific students and the nature of their unusual patterns, cross-referencing with other available academic indicators, and preparing for potential follow-up discussions with affected students to understand their circumstances. Option D. Deactivate the monitoring system to avoid potential misinterpretations of student behavior and focus solely on traditional assessment methods. The correct answer is C. Initiate a review of the monitoring system's data to identify specific students and the nature of their unusual patterns, cross-referencing with other available academic indicators, and preparing for potential follow-up discussions with affected students to understand their circumstances. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the need for efficient resource allocation with the ethical imperative to ensure student well-being and academic integrity. The university entrance exam is a critical juncture for prospective students, and any system designed to monitor their progress must be implemented with fairness and transparency. The challenge lies in interpreting data from a monitoring system in a way that is both effective for identifying potential issues and respectful of individual student circumstances. The correct approach involves a nuanced interpretation of the monitoring system's data, focusing on identifying patterns that suggest genuine academic difficulty or potential breaches of academic integrity, rather than immediate punitive action. This approach aligns with the principles of fairness and due process inherent in educational institutions. Specifically, it requires a systematic review of the identified patterns, seeking corroborating evidence, and offering support or intervention before resorting to disciplinary measures. This aligns with the spirit of fostering student success, a core value for any educational institution, and adheres to the implicit guidelines of responsible academic oversight. An approach that immediately flags students for potential disciplinary action based solely on a single data point from the monitoring system is procedurally flawed and ethically questionable. It fails to consider the possibility of technical glitches, external factors affecting student performance, or the need for a more comprehensive understanding of the situation. This approach risks unfairly penalizing students and undermining the trust between the university and its applicants. Another incorrect approach, which involves ignoring the data from the monitoring system altogether, represents a failure of due diligence. Educational institutions have a responsibility to implement and utilize tools that can help ensure the integrity of their admissions processes and support student success. Disregarding such a system, even if it presents complex data, abdicates this responsibility and could leave the university vulnerable to academic misconduct or inefficient resource allocation. Finally, an approach that focuses solely on the technical aspects of the monitoring system without considering its impact on students or the broader academic environment is incomplete. While technical proficiency is important, the ultimate goal of such a system is to serve the academic and ethical objectives of the university. A purely technical focus neglects the human element and the potential consequences for students. The professional decision-making process in such situations should involve a multifaceted evaluation. First, understand the purpose and limitations of the monitoring system. Second, establish clear protocols for interpreting the data, including thresholds for concern and steps for further investigation. Third, prioritize a supportive and rehabilitative approach where possible, reserving punitive measures for clear and substantiated breaches of academic integrity. Fourth, ensure transparency in the process and provide avenues for students to appeal or explain their circumstances. Question 8. The monitoring system demonstrates a statistically significant correlation between the socioeconomic background of applicants and their performance on preliminary aptitude assessments for the Adventist University of Chile entrance exam. This disparity raises concerns about equitable access to higher education. Which of the following represents the most ethically and regulatorily sound approach to address this finding? Option A. Develop and offer targeted, free preparatory workshops and resources specifically designed to address the identified knowledge, skill gaps among students from disadvantaged socioeconomic backgrounds, while continuing with the standard entrance examination process. Option B. Increase the overall difficulty of the entrance examination to ensure only the most academically prepared candidates are admitted, thereby implicitly addressing the disparity by selecting for higher aptitude. Option C. Acknowledge the disparity but take no immediate action, citing the need for further long-term studies on the root causes of socioeconomic disparities in education before implementing any interventions. Option D. Reallocate university resources away from preparatory programs and towards enhancing the facilities and faculty for admitted students, arguing that the university should focus on those who have already demonstrated sufficient preparation. The correct answer is A. Develop and offer targeted, free preparatory workshops and resources specifically designed to address the identified knowledge or skill gaps among students from disadvantaged socioeconomic backgrounds, while continuing with the standard entrance examination process. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the need for efficient resource allocation with the ethical imperative to ensure all students have equitable access to educational opportunities. The university entrance exam process, particularly in Chile, is governed by specific regulations aimed at fairness and transparency. The monitoring system's findings, if not addressed appropriately, could lead to discriminatory practices or a perception of unfairness, potentially violating the principles of equal opportunity enshrined in Chilean educational law and the Adventist University of Chile's own ethical guidelines. Careful judgment is required to interpret the data and implement a solution that upholds these principles without unduly burdening the university's operational capacity. The correct approach involves a proactive and data-driven strategy to identify and support students who may be disadvantaged. This entails not just acknowledging the disparity, but actively seeking to understand its root causes and implementing targeted interventions. This aligns with the ethical obligation to promote inclusivity and provide a supportive learning environment, as well as the regulatory framework that emphasizes fair access to higher education. By offering additional preparatory resources, the university demonstrates a commitment to leveling the playing field and ensuring that all eligible candidates have a genuine opportunity to succeed, regardless of their prior educational background. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on the financial implications of the disparity, without considering the underlying causes or the ethical implications for student access, fails to address the core issue. This approach risks perpetuating existing inequalities and could be seen as prioritizing financial efficiency over educational equity, potentially contravening principles of social justice and fair access to education. Another incorrect approach that involves simply increasing the difficulty of the exam to weed out less prepared students is ethically unsound and likely to be discriminatory. This strategy does not offer support or address potential systemic disadvantages, instead penalizing students for circumstances beyond their immediate control. It fails to uphold the university's responsibility to foster learning and development. A further incorrect approach that involves ignoring the monitoring system's findings altogether represents a dereliction of professional duty. This inaction allows potential inequities to persist unchecked, undermining the integrity of the entrance exam process and the university's commitment to fairness. It demonstrates a lack of due diligence and a failure to proactively manage risks associated with student admissions. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a systematic evaluation of the data, consultation with relevant stakeholders, e.g., admissions office, academic departments, student support services, and a thorough understanding of the applicable regulatory and ethical frameworks. The goal is to identify solutions that are both effective in addressing the identified issues and compliant with all relevant guidelines, ensuring fairness, equity, and the integrity of the admissions process. Question 9. The evaluation methodology shows a need to identify potential threats to the Adventist University of Chile's entrance examination process. Which of the following approaches best addresses this need by focusing on proactive and comprehensive risk management? Option A. Primarily focusing on minor logistical inconveniences that applicants might face on the day of the exam, such as seating arrangements or availability of water. Option B. Prioritizing cost-saving measures for exam administration, even if it means reducing the budget for security personnel or secure testing environments. Option C. Systematically identifying potential vulnerabilities in the examination process, categorizing them by likelihood and impact, and developing targeted mitigation strategies to safeguard the integrity and fairness of the admissions. Option D, relying on post-exam feedback from applicants and invigilators to identify any issues that may have arisen during the examination period. Correct answer is C, systematically identifying potential vulnerabilities in the examination process, categorizing them by likelihood and impact, and developing targeted mitigation strategies to safeguard the integrity and fairness of the admissions. Explanation: this scenario presents a challenge in risk assessment by requiring the identification of potential threats to the Adventist University of Chile's entrance examination process. The professional challenge lies in anticipating and mitigating risks that could compromise the integrity and fairness of the exam, thereby impacting the university's reputation and the validity of its admissions. Careful judgment is required to distinguish between minor inconveniences and significant threats that could lead to unfair advantages or disadvantages for applicants. The correct approach involves proactively identifying and categorizing potential risks based on their likelihood and impact, and then developing appropriate mitigation strategies. This aligns with the principles of good governance and operational integrity expected of educational institutions. Specifically, within the context of university admissions in Chile, regulatory frameworks and institutional guidelines would emphasize fairness, transparency, and the prevention of fraud or bias. A robust risk assessment process ensures that these principles are upheld by anticipating and addressing potential vulnerabilities before they materialize. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on immediate logistical issues without considering broader integrity risks fails to address the core purpose of risk assessment in an examination setting. This approach might overlook systemic vulnerabilities that could be exploited, leading to compromised exam results. Ethically, it demonstrates a lack of foresight and commitment to maintaining a fair and equitable admissions process. Another incorrect approach that prioritizes cost saving over security measures is also professionally unacceptable. While financial prudence is important, it should not come at the expense of the exam's integrity. This approach risks creating vulnerabilities that could be exploited, potentially leading to reputational damage and legal challenges if the fairness of the admissions process is questioned. Regulatory frameworks governing educational institutions often mandate certain security standards to protect the integrity of assessments. A further incorrect approach that relies on reactive measures rather than proactive identification and mitigation is also flawed. Waiting for problems to occur before addressing them is inefficient and can lead to significant disruption and damage. A proactive risk assessment framework is designed to prevent issues, not just to respond to them after they have caused harm. This reactive stance undermines the principles of responsible management and institutional due diligence. The professional decision-making process for similar situations involves a systematic approach. First, understanding the objectives of the process being assessed, in this case, fair and secure entrance exams. Second, brainstorming potential threats and vulnerabilities. Third, evaluating the likelihood and impact of each identified risk. Fourth, prioritizing risks based on their severity. And fifth, developing and implementing appropriate control and mitigation measures. This structured approach, guided by institutional policies and relevant Chilean educational regulations, ensures a comprehensive and effective risk management strategy. Question 10. Investigation of the Adventist University of Chile's entrance examination process reveals potential vulnerabilities that could compromise its fairness and integrity. Which of the following approaches best addresses these concerns from a risk assessment perspective? Option A. Conducting a comprehensive review of all examination procedures, from question design and security to invigilation and post-examination analysis, to identify and mitigate potential risks proactively. Option B. Focusing primarily on the technological aspects of examination security, such as anti-plagiarism software, while overlooking procedural and human elements. Option C. Implementing a robust system for detecting and penalizing any instances of cheating after the examination has concluded. Option D. Prioritizing the rapid development and deployment of examination questions to meet admission deadlines, with less emphasis on exhaustive review. Correct answer is A. Conducting a comprehensive review of all examination procedures, from question design and security to invigilation and post-examination analysis, to identify and mitigate potential risks proactively. Explanation: this scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between the university's need to attract qualified students and the ethical imperative to ensure the integrity of the entrance examination process. Maintaining fairness and preventing any form of academic dishonesty is paramount to upholding the reputation and academic standards of the Adventist University of Chile. Careful judgment is required to balance these competing interests. The correct approach involves a proactive and systematic risk assessment to identify potential vulnerabilities in the examination process and to implement appropriate mitigation strategies. This aligns with the principles of academic integrity and good governance expected of educational institutions. Specifically, it requires a thorough review of examination security protocols, question design, invigilation procedures, and the potential for technological misuse. This systematic approach ensures that the university can anticipate and address potential threats to the examination's validity before they occur, thereby safeguarding the fairness of the admission process for all applicants. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on post-examination detection of cheating is professionally deficient. While detection is important, it is reactive rather than preventative. Relying solely on this method fails to address the root causes of potential breaches and may lead to a perception that the university is not adequately safeguarding the examination's integrity. This can erode trust among applicants and the wider academic community. Another incorrect approach that prioritizes speed and efficiency over thoroughness in question development is also professionally unacceptable. Rushing the creation of examination materials increases the likelihood of errors, ambiguities, or the inadvertent inclusion of questions that could be easily compromised. This undermines the validity of the assessment and can lead to unfair outcomes for candidates. Finally, an approach that neglects to consider the ethical implications of examination security, such as the privacy of applicants or the potential for bias in security measures, is also flawed. Ethical considerations must be integrated into every stage of the risk assessment process to ensure that the university acts responsibly and respects the rights of all individuals involved. Professionals in this situation should employ a decision-making framework that begins with a comprehensive understanding of the objectives of the entrance examination and the potential risks to its integrity. This involves identifying all possible threats, evaluating their likelihood and impact, and then developing a prioritized plan of mitigation strategies. This plan should be regularly reviewed and updated to adapt to evolving challenges. The process should be guided by principles of fairness, transparency, and academic integrity, ensuring that all decisions are defensible and aligned with the university's mission and ethical standards. Question 11. Benchmark analysis indicates that Adventist University of Chile is considering a significant expansion of its online course offering to increase enrollment and revenue. Which of the following approaches to assessing this strategic initiative best aligns with responsible institutional governance and risk management principles within the Chilean regulatory framework for higher education? Option A. Conducting a detailed risk assessment that identifies potential challenges in technology infrastructure, faculty training, student support, and financial viability, and developing corresponding mitigation plans. Option B. Relying on the success of similar online programs at other universities as a primary justification for the expansion, without a specific analysis of Adventist University of Chile's unique context. Option C. Focusing primarily on the projected revenue increases from the expansion, assuming that any associated costs or risks will be manageable. Option D. Prioritizing the immediate recruitment of new students for online programs based on market demand, with a secondary consideration for operational challenges. The correct answer is A. Conducting a detailed risk assessment that identifies potential challenges in technology infrastructure, faculty training, student support, and financial viability, and developing corresponding mitigation plans. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires an individual to balance the university's strategic goals with the ethical imperative of responsible resource allocation and risk management. The pressure to achieve ambitious targets can sometimes lead to overlooking potential downsides or making decisions based on incomplete information, which is professionally perilous. Careful judgment is required to ensure that growth strategies are sustainable and do not expose the university to undue financial or reputational harm. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a systematic and comprehensive risk assessment process. This means identifying potential risks associated with the proposed expansion, evaluating their likelihood and potential impact, and developing mitigation strategies. This aligns with principles of good governance and prudent financial management, which are implicitly expected of individuals in positions of responsibility within educational institutions. Specifically, within the Chilean regulatory framework for higher education, institutions are expected to operate with transparency and accountability, ensuring that financial decisions are well justified and that potential negative outcomes are proactively addressed. This approach prioritizes long-term institutional health over short-term gains. Incorrect approach is analysis, an approach that focuses solely on the potential benefits of expansion without a thorough evaluation of risks fails to uphold the principle of prudent financial management. This could lead to unforeseen financial shortfalls or operational disruptions, potentially violating guidelines related to institutional sustainability and responsible resource management. An approach that prioritizes immediate revenue generation above all else, disregarding potential negative impacts on academic quality or student experience, is ethically unsound. Educational institutions have a primary mission to provide quality education, and decisions that compromise this mission for financial expediency are professionally unacceptable and could contravene regulatory expectations regarding educational standards. An approach that relies on anecdotal evidence or personal intuition rather than structured analysis is inherently flawed. This lacks the rigor required for sound decision-making in an institutional setting and can lead to biased assessments and poor strategic choices, potentially exposing the university to risks that could have been identified and managed through a more objective process. Professional reasoning. Professionals facing similar situations should adopt a structured decision-making framework. This involves clearly defining the problem or opportunity, gathering relevant information from diverse sources, identifying and analyzing potential risks and benefits, considering ethical implications, consulting with relevant stakeholders, and documenting the decision-making process. This systematic approach ensures that decisions are well-informed, defensible, and aligned with institutional objectives and regulatory requirements. Question 12. Operational review demonstrates a pattern of students submitting work that appears to be heavily influenced by external sources without proper attribution, particularly among first-year students who may be unfamiliar with academic citation standards. The review also notes an increase in student requests for academic extensions due to reported personal and mental health challenges. Considering the Adventist University of Chile's commitment to academic excellence and student well-being, what is the most appropriate initial response to this operational review? Option A. Immediately implement stricter plagiarism detection software across all submissions and issue a university-wide warning about severe penalties for academic dishonesty. Option B. Advise faculty to grant extensions liberally for any student requesting them, prioritizing student well-being over strict adherence to submission deadlines. Option C. Initiate a comprehensive review of the university's academic integrity policies and student support services, developing targeted educational programs on proper citation and academic honesty, while simultaneously reinforcing the availability and accessibility of mental health and counseling services for students. Option D. Focus solely on disciplinary actions for any identified instances of academic misconduct, assuming students are intentionally circumventing rules. Correct answer is C. Initiate a comprehensive review of the university's academic integrity policies and student support services, developing targeted educational programs on proper citation and academic honesty, while simultaneously reinforcing the availability and accessibility of mental health and counseling services for students. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a challenge because it requires balancing the university's commitment to academic integrity with the need to support students facing personal difficulties. The operational review has identified a potential systemic issue, not just an isolated incident, which necessitates a thoughtful and compliant response. The challenge lies in ensuring that any intervention upholds the principles of fairness, due process, and adherence to the Adventist University of Chile's established academic regulations and ethical guidelines. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a systematic and documented process of investigation and support, strictly adhering to the Adventist University of Chile's internal regulations for academic misconduct and student welfare. This approach is right because it prioritizes a fair and impartial assessment of the situation, ensuring that students are treated according to established procedures. It also acknowledges the university's ethical responsibility to provide support mechanisms for students experiencing difficulties that might impact their academic performance without compromising academic standards. This aligns with the university's mission to foster a responsible and ethical academic community. Incorrect approaches analysis, an approach that immediately imposes punitive measures without a thorough investigation, fails to uphold the principles of due process and fairness. It bypasses the established procedures for addressing academic irregularities and could lead to unjust outcomes, violating the university's commitment to a fair academic environment. An approach that focuses solely on disciplinary action without exploring underlying student issues neglects the university's ethical obligation to support its students. While academic integrity is paramount, ignoring potential contributing factors like mental health or personal crises is an incomplete and potentially harmful response, not aligned with a holistic educational philosophy. An approach that involves informal discussions and resolutions without proper documentation or adherence to university policy risks inconsistency and a lack of accountability. It may not adequately address the seriousness of academic misconduct and could set a precedent for circumventing established procedures, undermining the integrity of the academic system. Professional reasoning. Professionals in this context should employ a decision-making framework that begins with understanding the specific regulatory framework of the Adventist University of Chile. This involves consulting internal policies on academic integrity, student conduct, and support services. The next step is to gather all relevant information objectively, followed by a structured assessment of the situation against these policies. Finally, decisions should be made and actions taken in a transparent, documented, and ethically sound manner, always prioritizing fairness and adherence to established university guidelines. Question 13. When evaluating a candidate's entrance exam performance who has disclosed a significant personal emergency that may have impacted their results, what is the most appropriate risk assessment approach for the Adventist University of Chile Admissions Committee? Option A. Rely on the candidate's self-reported impact of the emergency and make an immediate decision without seeking additional information or consulting with university departments. Option B. Grant the candidate an automatic exemption from the entrance exam and offer admission based on their disclosed personal emergency without further assessment. Option C. Conduct a comprehensive review of the candidate's disclosed emergency, gather supporting documentation if appropriate, consult with relevant university support services, and then make a decision regarding potential accommodations or reevaluation based on established university policies and ethical considerations. Option D. Immediately disqualify the candidate from admission due to the potential compromise of their exam performance, citing adherence to strict entrance examination protocols. The correct answer is C. Conduct a comprehensive review of the candidate's disclosed emergency, gather supporting documentation if appropriate, consult with relevant university support services, and then make a decision regarding potential accommodations or reevaluation based on established university policies and ethical considerations. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the university's commitment to academic integrity with the need to support students facing personal difficulties. The entrance exam process, particularly for a university like Adventist University of Chile, is designed to assess a candidate's preparedness and potential. However, a rigid adherence to exam rules without considering extenuating circumstances could lead to an unfair outcome for a deserving candidate. The challenge lies in applying established regulations in a manner that is both just and aligned with the university's values. The correct approach involves a thorough and empathetic risk assessment that prioritizes understanding the student's situation while upholding the integrity of the examination process. This entails gathering all relevant information, consulting with appropriate university authorities, such as the admissions committee or a student support office, and making a decision based on a comprehensive evaluation of the risks and benefits. This approach is ethically sound as it demonstrates fairness, compassion, and a commitment to due process. It aligns with principles of responsible institutional practice by seeking to mitigate potential harm to the student while safeguarding the academic standards of the university. An approach that immediately disqualifies the student without further investigation fails to acknowledge the possibility of mitigating circumstances and could be perceived as overly punitive. This disregards the ethical obligation to consider individual situations and may violate principles of fairness and equity. Another incorrect approach would be to grant an immediate exemption or special consideration without a proper assessment of the situation or consultation with relevant departments. This could undermine the credibility of the entrance exam process and set a precedent that compromises academic standards. It also risks overlooking potential issues that might require more nuanced solutions. Finally, an approach that relies solely on anecdotal information or personal bias, rather than a structured assessment and consultation, is professionally unsound. This introduces subjectivity and can lead to inconsistent and unfair decision-making, failing to adhere to established institutional procedures and ethical guidelines. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with a clear understanding of the relevant university policies and ethical guidelines. This should be followed by a systematic information gathering process, consultation with relevant stakeholders, and a balanced consideration of all factors before reaching a decision. The framework should emphasize fairness, transparency, and the best interests of both the student and the institution. Question 14. Governance review demonstrates that the Adventist University of Chile's endowment fund is underperforming, creating pressure to explore more aggressive investment strategies to meet immediate operational budget shortfalls. Which of the following represents the most prudent and ethically sound approach to address this situation? Option A. Seek short-term loans from financial institutions to cover the budget deficit, deferring any decisions about the endowment's investment strategy. Option B. Engage an independent financial advisor to conduct a comprehensive risk assessment of current and proposed investment strategies, considering the university's long-term financial health and mission alignment. Option C. Halt all new investments and focus solely on preserving the existing capital, even if it means foregoing potential growth opportunities. Option D. Immediately reallocate a significant portion of the endowment to higher risk, higher return investments to quickly generate the necessary funds for the operational budget. The correct answer is B. Engage an independent financial advisor to conduct a comprehensive risk assessment of current and proposed investment strategies, considering the university's long-term financial health and mission alignment. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between the university's immediate financial needs and the long-term implications of its investment strategy. The governance review has identified a potential risk, requiring a careful assessment of how to proceed without compromising fiduciary duties or ethical standards. The decision-making process must be grounded in the principles of responsible financial management and adherence to any relevant institutional policies or ethical codes applicable to the Adventist University of Chile. The correct approach involves a thorough, independent risk assessment that considers all potential outcomes, both positive and negative, and their impact on the university's mission and financial stability. This aligns with principles of prudent financial stewardship, which mandate that decisions be made with due diligence and a clear understanding of the associated risks and rewards. Such an assessment would inform a balanced strategy that addresses immediate financial pressures while safeguarding long-term assets and the university's educational objectives. An approach that prioritizes immediate financial gains without a comprehensive risk evaluation would be ethically unsound and potentially violate institutional policies regarding financial prudence. This could lead to unforeseen losses, jeopardizing the university's ability to fulfill its educational mission. Similarly, an approach that solely focuses on risk aversion, potentially foregoing necessary investments or strategic opportunities due to fear of any potential downside, could also be detrimental. This might lead to missed growth opportunities and a failure to adapt to changing financial landscapes, ultimately impacting the university's long-term sustainability. A reactive approach, addressing the issue only after significant negative impacts have occurred, demonstrates a failure in proactive governance and risk management, which is a core responsibility of university leadership. Professionals in such situations should employ a structured decision-making process that begins with a clear understanding of the problem and the governing principles. This involves gathering all relevant information, consulting with stakeholders, conducting a comprehensive risk assessment, evaluating various strategic options against established criteria, including ethical and regulatory compliance, and documenting the rationale for the chosen course of action. This systematic approach ensures that decisions are informed, defensible, and aligned with the best interests of the institution. Question 15. Analysis of a situation where an individual involved in the administration of the Adventist University of Chile's entrance exam discovers they have a close personal relationship with one of the applicants. What is the most ethically sound and procedurally correct course of action to maintain the integrity of the entrance examination process? Option A. Privately communicate with the applicant to offer encouragement and reassurance, emphasizing the importance of their best effort without providing any specific information about the exam. Option B. Discreetly offer the applicant advice on general study strategies and common pitfalls to avoid during the exam, without revealing specific content. Option C. Continue with their responsibilities in the entrance exam administration, assuming their personal relationship will not influence their professional judgment, and avoid discussing the applicant with colleagues. Option D. Immediately disclose the personal relationship to the designated university authority responsible for overseeing the entrance exam and request to be recused from any tasks that could directly or indirectly affect the applicant's evaluation or admission. The correct answer is D. Immediately disclose the personal relationship to the designated university authority responsible for overseeing the entrance exam and request to be recused from any tasks that could directly or indirectly affect the applicant's evaluation or admission. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires an individual to navigate potential conflicts of interest and ensure that decisions are made in the best interest of the university and its students, adhering strictly to the Adventist University of Chile's entrance exam regulations. The core of the challenge lies in maintaining objectivity and transparency when personal relationships might influence judgment. Careful consideration of the university's ethical guidelines and entrance exam procedures is paramount to avoid any perception or reality of bias. The correct approach involves a proactive and transparent disclosure of the relationship to the relevant university authorities responsible for the entrance exam administration. This allows for an objective assessment of the situation and the implementation of appropriate measures to ensure fairness, such as recusal from any decision-making processes directly impacting the applicant. This aligns with ethical principles of integrity and impartiality, and implicitly with any university regulations that mandate reporting potential conflicts of interest to maintain the credibility and fairness of its admissions processes. The Adventist University of Chile, like any academic institution, would expect its personnel to uphold high ethical standards, which includes managing relationships that could compromise the integrity of its selection procedures. An incorrect approach that involves proceeding without disclosure risks violating ethical codes of conduct and potentially university regulations concerning conflicts of interest. This failure to disclose can lead to accusations of favoritism and undermine the fairness of the entrance exam, damaging the university's reputation. Another incorrect approach, which is to subtly influence the applicant's preparation without direct involvement in the exam itself, is also professionally unacceptable. While it might seem less direct, it still represents an attempt to leverage a personal connection for an advantage, which is ethically dubious and could still be seen as a breach of impartiality if discovered. It bypasses the formal channels for addressing conflicts of interest and relies on covert actions, which is contrary to the transparency expected in academic admissions. A further incorrect approach, such as advising the applicant on specific exam content or strategies based on insider knowledge, is a clear violation of academic integrity and fairness. This directly compromises the equal opportunity that all applicants should have, and is likely to be explicitly prohibited by the university's entrance exam guidelines, which aim to assess candidates on their own merits. The professional decision-making process in such situations should involve a clear understanding of the university's policies on conflicts of interest and ethical conduct. When a potential conflict arises, the first step is to identify it. Subsequently, the individual should consult the relevant university policies and procedures. If a conflict is confirmed, the professional must then take appropriate action, which typically involves disclosing the conflict to a supervisor or designated authority and recusing themselves from any decision-making that could be influenced by the conflict. This systematic approach ensures that decisions are fair, transparent, and compliant with all applicable regulations and ethical standards. Question 16. Quality control measures reveal a significant statistical anomaly in the performance of one candidate on the Adventist University of Chile entrance exam, suggesting a potential breach of examination integrity. The anomaly is detected during the post-exam analysis phase. What is the most appropriate immediate course of action for the admissions committee? Option A. Publicly announce the detected anomaly and the candidate's name to alert other applicants and faculty about potential issues. Option B. Proceed with the candidate's admission as planned, assuming the anomaly is a result of an unusual but legitimate performance. Option C. Immediately disqualify the candidate from the entrance exam and deny admission based on the statistical anomaly. Option D. Initiate a formal review process according to the university's established policies for academic integrity and admissions, gathering all relevant documentation and evidence before making any determination. Correct answer is D. Initiate a formal review process according to the university's established policies for academic integrity and admissions, gathering all relevant documentation and evidence before making any determination. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the university's commitment to academic integrity with the need to address potential misconduct swiftly and fairly. The entrance exam is a critical gateway, and any perceived compromise in its administration could undermine the credibility of the admissions process and the institution itself. Careful judgment is required to ensure that any investigation is thorough, unbiased, and adheres to the established procedures of the Adventist University of Chile. The correct approach involves initiating a formal review process, as outlined by the university's internal regulations for academic integrity and admissions. This approach is professionally sound because it respects due process, ensures a systematic and documented investigation, and allows for a fair assessment of the evidence. Specifically, it aligns with the principles of fairness and transparency expected in academic admissions, and it would be supported by the Adventist University of Chile's internal policies on academic misconduct and examination procedures, which likely mandate a structured investigation before any disciplinary action is taken. An approach that immediately disqualifies the candidate without a thorough investigation is professionally unacceptable. This fails to uphold the principle of innocent until proven guilty and bypasses the university's established procedures for handling allegations of academic dishonesty, could lead to an unjust outcome and potential reputational damage to the university if the allegations are unfounded. Another incorrect approach, which is to ignore the discrepancy and proceed with the admission, is also professionally unsound. This neglects the university's responsibility to maintain the integrity of its entrance examination and admissions process. It could set a precedent for future misconduct and compromise the fairness of the selection for other candidates. Finally, an approach that involves publicizing the alleged misconduct before a formal investigation is ethically problematic and potentially damaging. This violates the privacy of the applicant and could lead to undue reputational harm without due process. It also undermines the confidential nature of internal university investigations. The professional decision-making process in such situations should involve 1. Recognizing the potential issue and its implications for academic integrity. 2. Consulting relevant university policies and procedures for handling examination irregularities and academic misconduct. 3. Initiating a formal documented investigation in accordance with these policies. 4. Gathering and evaluating evidence objectively. 5. Making a decision based on the findings of the investigation and established university guidelines. 6. Communicating the decision and any subsequent actions through the appropriate channels. Question 17. Stakeholder feedback indicates potential inconsistencies in the evaluation of applications for the Adventist University of Chile's entrance exam, raising concerns about fairness and data integrity. Which of the following represents the most appropriate initial step for the university's admissions committee to address these concerns? Option A. Delegate the responsibility of investigating the feedback to a junior administrative staff member to handle routine inquiries. Option B. Conduct a comprehensive risk assessment of the entire admissions process, identifying potential vulnerabilities and areas for improvement based on the feedback. Option C. Issue a public statement assuring stakeholders that the admissions process is fair and unbiased without further investigation. Option D. Immediately revise the admissions criteria to eliminate any perceived subjectivity in the evaluation process? The correct answer is B. Conduct a comprehensive risk assessment of the entire admissions process, identifying potential vulnerabilities and areas for improvement based on the feedback. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the university's strategic goals with the ethical and regulatory obligations concerning student data privacy and the integrity of the admissions process. The university must act responsibly and transparently when addressing concerns raised by stakeholders, particularly when those concerns touch upon sensitive information and potential biases. A careful judgment is required to ensure that any investigation or response is conducted in a manner that upholds fairness, confidentiality, and compliance with relevant regulations. The correct approach involves a systematic and objective risk assessment process. This begins with acknowledging the stakeholder feedback and then initiating a structured review to identify potential risks associated with the admissions process, such as bias, data security breaches, or procedural irregularities. This approach is correct because it aligns with principles of good governance and risk management, which are implicitly expected of educational institutions. Specifically, it demonstrates a commitment to continuous improvement and adherence to ethical standards by proactively addressing potential issues. While specific Chilean regulations for university entrance exams are not detailed here, the general principles of fairness, transparency, and data protection are universally applicable and would be expected to be upheld by any reputable educational institution. This approach ensures that any identified risks are understood, evaluated, and mitigated in a controlled and documented manner. An incorrect approach would be to dismiss the feedback without investigation. This fails to acknowledge the seriousness of stakeholder concerns and could lead to reputational damage and a loss of trust. Ethically, it suggests a lack of accountability and a disregard for the well-being of applicants. Another incorrect approach would be to immediately implement sweeping changes based on unsubstantiated feedback. This lacks a proper risk assessment and could disrupt the admissions process unnecessarily, potentially creating new problems or unfairly penalizing applicants. It demonstrates a reactive rather than a proactive and reasoned response. A third incorrect approach would be to conduct a superficial review that does not involve objective data analysis or a thorough examination of the admissions criteria and procedures. This would fail to identify the root causes of any potential issues and would not provide a solid basis for informed decision-making, thus undermining the integrity of the process. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured risk management framework. This includes 1. Identifying potential risks, 2. Assessing the likelihood and impact of these risks, 3. Developing strategies to mitigate or manage the risks, and 4. Monitoring and reviewing the effectiveness of these strategies. In this context, it means taking stakeholder feedback seriously, conducting a thorough and objective assessment of the admissions process, and implementing evidence-based improvements while ensuring compliance with all applicable ethical and regulatory guidelines. Question 18. Research into the Adventist University of Chile's entrance examination process reveals potential vulnerabilities. Which of the following approaches best addresses the inherent risks associated with ensuring a fair and valid assessment for all prospective students? Option A. Prioritizing the rapid processing and grading of examination papers to expedite the release of admission decisions, even if it means a less thorough review of individual responses. Option B. Relying primarily on historical data and previous admission cycles to predict candidate success, without a detailed evaluation of the current examination's design and administration. Option C. Focusing exclusively on enhancing physical security measures at the examination centers to prevent unauthorized access and the introduction of prohibited materials. Option D. Implementing a comprehensive risk assessment framework that identifies, analyzes, and mitigates potential threats to the integrity of the examination content, administration, and scoring, in alignment with university policies and Chilean educational standards. The correct answer is D. Implementing a comprehensive risk assessment framework that identifies, analyzes, and mitigates potential threats to the integrity of the examination content, administration, and scoring, in alignment with university policies and Chilean educational standards. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the university's commitment to academic integrity with the need to provide a fair and supportive environment for prospective students. The entrance exam is a critical gatekeeping mechanism, but its design and administration must adhere to principles of fairness, transparency, and ethical conduct as outlined by the Adventist University of Chile's internal regulations and broader educational guidelines in Chile. The challenge lies in identifying potential risks to the integrity of the exam process without resorting to overly restrictive or discriminatory measures. The correct approach involves a proactive and comprehensive risk assessment that considers various potential vulnerabilities in the exam process, from question design to administration and scoring. This approach is justified by the university's ethical obligation to ensure a valid and reliable assessment of candidates' abilities and knowledge, and to maintain public trust in its admissions process. Specifically, it aligns with principles of good governance and educational best practices, which mandate that assessment tools are fair, unbiased, and administered in a secure environment. This proactive stance allows for the development of mitigation strategies before any issues arise, thereby safeguarding the integrity of the entrance examination. An approach that focuses solely on the security of the physical examination venue, without considering the content or administration of the exam itself, is insufficient. This failure overlooks risks related to question validity, potential for cheating through unauthorized aids, or biases in question design, all of which can compromise the fairness of the assessment. Similarly, an approach that prioritizes speed and efficiency in grading above all else risks overlooking errors or inconsistencies that could unfairly disadvantage candidates. This neglects the fundamental principle of accurate and fair evaluation. Finally, an approach that relies solely on past exam performance without considering current candidate preparedness or potential external influences fails to provide a holistic and equitable assessment. This can lead to an inaccurate reflection of a candidate's current capabilities and potential for success at the university. Professionals should employ a systematic risk management framework. This involves identifying potential risks, analyzing their likelihood and impact, evaluating existing controls, and developing and implementing mitigation strategies. For university entrance exams, this means considering risks related to question security, test design fairness, administration procedures, and candidate evaluation. The process should be iterative, with regular reviews and updates to the risk assessment and mitigation plans. Question 19. Risk assessment procedures indicate that a prospective student applicant for the Adventist University of Chile's entrance exam has disclosed significant personal challenges that they believe will impair their performance on the scheduled examination. The applicant requests special accommodations during the exam itself. Option A. The admissions committee should inform the applicant that personal challenges are not considered valid reasons for altering entrance exam procedures and proceed with the exam as scheduled without any adjustments. Option B. The admissions committee should allow the applicant to submit a portfolio of previous academic work as a substitute for the entrance exam, given their stated difficulties. Option C. The admissions committee should review the applicant's disclosed challenges and, if deemed significant, offer to reschedule the examination for a later date or direct the applicant to university support services for personal counseling, while maintaining the original exam format and difficulty for all candidates. Option D. The admissions committee should immediately grant the applicant additional time and a separate, quieter testing environment for the entrance exam to accommodate their disclosed personal challenges. The correct answer is C. The admissions committee should review the applicant's disclosed challenges and, if deemed significant, offer to reschedule the examination for a later date or direct the applicant to university support services for personal counseling, while maintaining the original exam format and difficulty for all candidates. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the university's commitment to academic integrity with the need to support students facing personal difficulties. The entrance exam process, particularly at a university like Adventist University of Chile, is designed to assess a candidate's preparedness and potential. Introducing external factors into the assessment, even with good intentions, can compromise the fairness and validity of the evaluation for all applicants. The core ethical consideration is ensuring a level playing field for all prospective students. The correct approach involves a structured and transparent process that upholds the integrity of the entrance examination while offering appropriate support mechanisms outside of the direct assessment. This means acknowledging the student's situation and directing them to university resources designed for such circumstances, such as academic advising, counseling services, or deferral options if available and applicable to the entrance exam policy. This aligns with the university's responsibility to maintain fair admission standards and to provide a supportive environment for its student body, ensuring that academic merit remains the primary basis for admission. An incorrect approach would be to directly alter the entrance exam conditions for a single student based on their disclosed personal issues. This could involve providing them with additional time, easier questions, or allowing external assistance during the exam. Such actions would violate the principle of equal opportunity and could be perceived as preferential treatment, undermining the credibility of the entire admission process. Ethically, it breaches the duty of fairness to other applicants who prepared under standard conditions. Furthermore, it could set a precedent for future requests, creating administrative complexities and potential for disputes. Another incorrect approach would be to dismiss the student's concerns without offering any alternative support, which would be a failure in the university's duty of care and could be seen as lacking compassion and failing to uphold the values often associated with an academic institution. Professionals in university admissions should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes fairness, transparency, and adherence to established policies. This involves 1. Understanding the university's admission policies and procedures thoroughly. 2. Evaluating the nature of the request against these policies. 3. Identifying appropriate university resources that can address the student's underlying issues without compromising the integrity of the assessment. 4. Communicating clearly and empathetically with the student about the available options and the reasons for the university's stance. 5. Documenting all interactions and decisions made. Question 20. Comparative studies suggest that different approaches to risk assessment can be employed when designing and administering university entrance examinations. Considering the Adventist University of Chile's commitment to academic integrity and equitable evaluation, which of the following approaches to risk assessment for its entrance exam would be most professionally sound and aligned with its institutional values? Option A. A reactive approach that focuses primarily on investigating and addressing instances of academic dishonesty or procedural irregularities only after they have been reported or detected during the examination. Option B. An approach that prioritizes the speed of examination administration and scoring above all else, with minimal upfront investment in risk identification and mitigation. Option C. A proactive approach that systematically identifies potential threats to the examination's fairness and security, analyzes their likelihood and impact, and develops specific strategies to prevent or mitigate them before the examination takes place. Option D. A generic risk assessment approach that applies standardized protocols without specific consideration for the unique academic environment, ethical standards, or logistical realities of the Adventist University of Chile. The correct answer is C. A proactive approach that systematically identifies potential threats to the examination's fairness and security, analyzes their likelihood and impact, and develops specific strategies to prevent or mitigate them before the examination takes place. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires an applicant to demonstrate an understanding of risk assessment principles within the specific context of university entrance examinations, as governed by the Adventist University of Chile's internal regulations and any applicable Chilean educational guidelines. The challenge lies in identifying the most appropriate approach to risk assessment for such a high-stakes evaluation, balancing fairness, security, and the integrity of the admissions process. Careful judgment is required to select an approach that is both effective and ethically sound, adhering to the university's stated objectives for its entrance exam. The correct approach involves a comprehensive and proactive identification of potential risks to the examination's integrity and fairness, followed by the development of mitigation strategies. This aligns with best practices in educational assessment and risk management, aiming to prevent issues before they arise. Specifically, within the framework of the Adventist University of Chile's entrance exam, this would involve considering risks such as academic dishonesty, technical failures in online components, if applicable, logistical issues, and potential biases. The university's commitment to academic excellence and ethical conduct would necessitate a risk assessment process that prioritizes the integrity of the evaluation and the equitable treatment of all applicants. This proactive stance is crucial for maintaining the credibility of the entrance exam and the university's reputation. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on reactive measures, such as only addressing instances of cheating after they occur, fails to uphold the principle of preventative risk management. This reactive stance can lead to a compromised examination process, potential legal challenges, and damage to the university's standing. Another incorrect approach that prioritizes speed and efficiency over thoroughness would overlook critical vulnerabilities, potentially leading to significant disruptions or unfair outcomes. Furthermore, an approach that neglects to consider the specific context and unique challenges of the Adventist University of Chile's entrance exam, perhaps by applying generic risk assessment models without adaptation, would be inadequate. Such a failure to tailor the assessment to the specific environment and objectives of the university would undermine the effectiveness of the risk management strategy and could lead to unintended negative consequences. Professionals tasked with designing or overseeing university entrance examinations should employ a structured decision-making framework. This framework should begin with clearly defining the objectives of the examination. Subsequently, potential risks should be systematically identified, analyzed for their likelihood and impact, and then prioritized. For each prioritized risk, appropriate mitigation strategies should be developed and implemented. Finally, a process for ongoing monitoring and review of the risk assessment and mitigation strategies should be established to ensure their continued effectiveness. This systematic and proactive approach, grounded in the specific regulatory and ethical considerations of the institution, is essential for ensuring a fair, secure, and credible entrance examination.